everybody. Welcome to another fabulous episode of Thyroid Refresh TV. I'm Dana Bowman, co-founder of Thyroid 30 and Thyroid Refresh.
And I'm Ginny Mahar, the other co-founder of Thyroid 30 and Thyroid Refresh. And we are so excited to be here today with Dr. Teralyn Sell. Welcome, Teralyn.
Happy birthday!
And it's her birthday today.
It is. I'm spending my birthday with Thyroid Refresh. It's so cool. Nice.
We're going to try to make this an extra fun show for you guys. And we're going to be talking about brain health, fatigue, and thyroid. And if you are a type A driven person who struggles with fatigue, anxiety, thyroid issues, you guys need to listen to this show. So Dan, I'll hand it over to you to tell everybody a little bit about Dr. Teralyn.
Okay. Well, she's got a list of skins on the wall: Masters of Science, Counseling, Psychology, National Board Certified Counselor, Mental Health and Addiction Nutrition Coach, Certified Transformational Nutrition Coach. In addition to being a lifestyle coach and a licensed therapist, she is the author of the upcoming book, Kick Off Your Damn Heels: How to Quit Anxiety and Live a Bad Life. Okay, maybe we should insert the, okay.
Oh, yeah. So for any of you out there with young listeners nearby, we do want to add a little disclaimer that there may be some adult language in this episode.
That's right. Bad Life. She is the host of the edgy and inspiring national podcast series, which we were on, Kick Off Your Damn Heels.
That's right.
Which delivers real life advice for anyone struggling with anxiety that want some holistic options. She's your gal. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, I have to say, you missed my PhD off the top. I do have a PhD in psychology.
Sorry.
I'm like, wait a minute, I'm Dr. Teralyn, and she forgot to talk about that part.
Sorry.
We're going to get, no problem. I just figured I would put that in there so people knew that I wasn't joking about that part.
Always important. Well, can we start with a little bit about your background and what brought you to the world of mental health?
Sure. Actually, that's a fascinating question, because most people expect this big, profound moment that I had. But at the time, I was just a mom with 3 kids, and I had a couple of daycare centers that I ran. And I knew my kids were going to be aging out of that pretty soon. And I thought, I got to reinvent myself, and I have to do it fast. So I was actually just kind of looking online, and I was like, mental health counselor, that sounds fun, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So that's what happened. It wasn't like this big, profound moment. And then I ended up doing some work within the prison system here in Wisconsin. And that's kind of how I got my clinical chops. And I call it probably the most extreme training anyone could ever be in, because it was extremely extreme. And now that I'm in private practice, it's funny to me because people will come in and they'll be like, oh, I'm probably the hardest client you've ever had. And I'm like, you have no idea, No. I welcome you. Please come sit on my couch, Yeah. And now in my practice, I really love to focus on women that are type A driven high performers. But inside, they're either struggling with tremendous anxiety or a serious fatigue that they just keep going and going and going. And then when they get home, they have nothing left to give, right? But it's because I am one, or I was one. And how do you think I have like so many, initials next to my name? Because I was driven to do more all the time and literally burned myself out in the process, trying to manage a family of 3 kids. And I think I just posted a picture about this on Facebook. When I started my master's degree, there's a picture with my husband with my son on his shoulders, and then my 2 daughters are there. My son was 1, and my middle daughter was 7, and my oldest daughter was 12. And when I graduated, my son was 10. My middle daughter was 16, and then my oldest was 21 with the PhD. So through all of that, still running the daycare centers, the last one was only sold like 6 years ago, working at the prison, like doing all these things, spinning all these plates. I look back and I'm like, how the hell did I do that? I have no idea. Today I'm 50. I'm taking it a lot more easy today.
Yeah.
But I don't know how I did that with all the kids and all their stuff, and but that is also when my thyroid was at its worst. That's when I was feeling the worst in my entire life. When you guys are on my show, like I tell people all the time, I have hypothyroid, but I don't have Hashimoto's. Right? But those were times where I felt the worst in my life. And I had a lot of, I work a lot with negative core belief systems, and I always strived to be enough or to be more. And I think that probably killed my thyroid even more with excessive stress and that I put on myself. So this drive to be enough led to, I said, at one point it was pretty much any license that I was eligible for in the state of Wisconsin. Plus, if I were to get a certificate, like I wouldn't just get the certificate, I would get the extra bonus certificate and the certificate beyond that certificate, like never stopping. And just kind of like, you've seen the memes, like it's a duck on the water, like you look good, you look fine, you look like you got it all together, but underneath you're like, that's what I felt like. Yeah, I felt like that all the time. But it got to a point where I would get home and literally crash. So I kept going and going and going until I would sit down, and then my body was like, literally, you're down and you're going to stay down. And so on the weekends too, it became, my husband and I would go somewhere and I'd be like, I just want to take a nap. And he'd be like, really? You want a nap? We're in this place. And I'm like, that sounds like a vacation to me. Like, yeah, I just want a nap, And that's when I found out I was in adrenal fatigue, So all these things kind of came into this big ball of ugly for me. And I knew that I needed to fix it and do it fast. Cause I didn't know what it would be like if I didn't. I was legitimately scared to know what that would feel like to not be able to do anything, so.
Wow.
Do you feel like that's in your practice? Have you seen that like personality type, the, high achievers, often have thyroid issues? Do you think there's like in some cases like a personality type that's more prone to thyroid issues?
I don't know the research on it, but I know that's a question that I ask them all the time. Have you checked your thyroid? And the response, and I'm sure that you hear this all the time, oh yes, I've had my TSH checked. Yeah. Like it's the same thing. I'm like,
and it's fine.
Right. And that's fine. So I don't know what's the problem, but that tie-in between the adrenals and the thyroid is so strong. And I know that there's tons of adrenal problems with high-performing women. So I would gather that there's a lot of thyroid or unrecognized thyroid issues, especially women after they've given birth. That seems to be like the tipping point for a lot of women. But I don't know the research on that. Do you guys know the research on that?
No, it's just interesting, and it does feel like there's a significant correlation. Myself, and I definitely, I was the same way. I just remember a little side note talking about going on, vacation and you wanted to nap. I was at a girls' Zumba yoga retreat on the Caribbean in Costa Rica. I was actually there to teach. My friend was there to do yoga, but I was only teaching one class a day. So I taught one aqua Zumba class a day. And we were in this beautiful place with all these really cool things to do. And all I wanted to do was nap.
Yeah.
And they were like, come on, just sit outside and read a book with us. I was like, okay, yeah, I will. But I just want to nap. And I would just pass out.
Like my naps were not 20 minutes. They were 2.5, 3 hours long.
No.
Right. Right.
Like a little baby, like conk, right?
Right. And what I failed to mention was in my 40s, so long ago now, in my 40s, I actually ran 6 half marathons within a couple of years when my thyroid was at its worst. And that was when my TSH was fine, everything was fine. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just keep doing this excessive physical activity, until my knees decided that I couldn't do that anymore. And I didn't realize that I was legitimately burning myself out
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Mm-hmm. I thought the very thing that was, self-care, the exercise, was so good for me, but it turned out to actually be quite the opposite. I couldn't heal while I was doing all that intense training. But this quest for do more, be more, to be enough, you're not enough, you're never enough, do more, legitimately probably caused me to be in a thyroid disease state and an adrenal disease state longer than I needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, I think like the mindset around thyroid is so powerful, because until you decide to change your core belief or figure it out, if you're still running ragged in that core belief, you're never going to heal your thyroid. You're never going to heal your adrenals, because you're going to keep going and going and going and going. When is enough enough? It never is. It never is.
And for me, unfortunately, that's just kind of the society we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit disheartening. I'm talking to my daughter the other day. We're talking about school, college, and she was asking me about sorority. I was in sorority, and she was asking me all the questions and how, and she's like, so what did you have to do to get in? And, how does it work? And then I start like kind of, because that's the way the society is. You got to have, this on your application. You have to have all these recs and all this stuff. And you need to volunteer, and society of more. And so for me, one of my biggest messages, one of the things that makes me feel really proud of Thyroid Refresh and Thyroid 30 is that we get to like talk to people and say, just try to slow down a little. Just try. It's okay. You're great either way. You're great whether you have 19 skins on the wall or not, right?
Right. Skins. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. But the funny part is with that slow down philosophy is, in slowing down for me there's a lot of fear around slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Because at those points, if I were to slow down, I would crash. Right. So slowing down meant, sleeping away my day. Slowing down meant being more behind in the stuff that I had to do when I was juggling legitimately everything, so there's fear in slowing down. So overcoming that fear and slowing, like, it'll be okay if you slow down. But you have to set yourself up for success in that, like allowing yourself to slow down. I would literally, okay, I will do 20 minutes of whatever paperwork I have to do or whatever. And then I'll go ahead and sit down for a while, But for a high performing woman, there's fear in slowing down. There's also fear in letting someone else, like I always tell everyone, I am still a self-professed control freak, like serious control freak. I'm way better now than I used to be, but letting go of control is another key point in thyroid health and adrenal health and in just overall mental health, letting go of some control. Because again, in letting go of control, there's a ton of fear. Like, I can always do it better than somebody else, right? Like, I can rely on myself all the time to get it done. How do you think I learned how to build websites and, social media and all that? Because I felt like I could never just trust somebody else or trust a process enough to do it. So again, you start adding more things onto your plate instead of letting things go. But it's worrying about, like, instead of I'm enough, like I literally have to tell myself this a lot. And I did some trauma work around it too. So there's that, like the internal trauma of being enough stems back into my childhood, which was not really what people would classify as a traumatic event for me. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it's replacing those negative core beliefs of not being enough to, I'm okay. I'm successful and I'm fine. I don't have to take on more to be something else, So really in the past 3 years is when I stopped pursuing more skins on the wall. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm from Wisconsin. That kind of sounds like that guy that used to.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, right. Exactly. So I stopped pursuing all of that. And everything's fine. And I never thought it would be. but it is, And so I'm just kind of stepping into what I love to do with what I have and, being fine with me. So anyway, yeah.
I think the pathways to that point can be so varied, but what we hear, the thing that really stuck out to me was when you said, I literally drove myself into the ground. And that's what we hear from the people who come to us over and over, is whether I was a single mom trying to make ends meet and taking care of aging parents and doing this. And we do literally just get driven into the ground to the point where it's like, I mean, the other day I fell asleep. My son asked me to play with him in our playroom. I fell asleep on the playroom floor for an hour, just on the floor.
Yeah.
Like,
then he was playing on you. Like
nap.
you were,
That's a real nap right there.
I was like, okay, we like to pretend. I was like, let's pretend I have a virus. You have to take care of it.
Let's pretend I'm a mountain and you're climbing it with your Lego man. Yeah.
Seriously. It's like, I'm going to lay down on this pillow and you have to like, get me a blanket. I'm shivering. And literally an hour later, my husband's like, do you want to move to the bed or are you okay?
Oh my God.
How long has it been? An hour. Yeah. I mean, that's a hypothyroid story for you right there.
I love it.
It definitely is. That is hilarious. Well, and digging yourself into the ground that's something that I hear all the time. And as you were talking, I was thinking about like the culture of work for women, and trying to compete, trying to compete educationally. That's when I was working for the state, there were a lot of female and male psychologists that were there. And if that didn't trigger, I'm not enough, I don't know what did, because there was tons of people. I mean, I believe that I talk like a normal human being. But in the state with some psychologists, it's like they had lots of psychological speak and research speak and all of this. And I just didn't have that. So there was this idea of I wasn't enough because I didn't talk like them in the first place. I found in private practice that actually helps me tremendously, versus talking above people, but that was where I was like, well, I need to go get a PhD. Because when I was working in the state, I only had a master's degree. See, there you go. But that's when I thought, well, I need to go get a PhD. And that's the catapulting of all of this. It started down here, master's was enough, and then it became not enough, and then PhD. And then after PhD, I'm like, well, that's still not good enough. I still need to get more certifications and things, and all that did is make me more tired and a lot more broke, So,
right. I think one of the things that's one of the biggest jobs Dana and I have to do, and maybe one of the biggest challenges we face with the people who come to us, is convincing them you're worth it. You are worth this kind of self-care and prioritizing your health. And, that whole idea of I can never be enough, I'm not enough, it's never enough, I think is so relatable and huge. Can we kind of circle back around to the root of that and maybe talk about how trauma and childhood trauma or just our histories sort of play into that belief that we're not enough, even when we're spinning so many plates and juggling so many balls that, we're driving ourselves into the ground, literally.
Right. Because everybody would look at me and they'd be like, how are you doing everything that you're doing? And I'm like, I have no idea. I was just on autopilot for much of it. But these belief systems, like I'm not enough, are typically born in childhood somewhere. So in my case, it wasn't an extreme trauma. Like people look for like a sexual trauma or emotional abuse or physical abuse, that type of thing. That's what we look at as being traumatic. Now, I know this sounds weird, but the trauma that I had was in 6th grade. This is what I boiled it down to for myself. It was 6th grade. It was solo ensemble. Do you know what that is? It's when you go in and you play an instrument in front of a judge. Okay. So I was playing the flute, and I was really good at the flute, but I was scared. I was so scared. I went in there and I had this huge knot in my stomach. I will never forget this. I'm playing the entertainer on the flute. Da, 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 right? I could play it in my sleep.
Right.
I sat in front of the judge, and nothing would come out. Like, I literally closed everything here. Now, when we think about fast forward to thyroid, isn't that interesting, right?
Wow.
Like,
Yeah,
right. Exactly. So trauma was held here, right? Nothing came out. So I'm playing like this, like I'm trying so hard, like I'm holding back the tears. I remember the judge looked at me when we were done, and he said, I'm getting all goosebumpy here. He goes, I'm giving you a first prize because I know you can do it. I walked out of there feeling like the biggest fraud of my life. Okay. I am not good enough to even earn a first prize. Now, he was doing something that he thought was good. Like, he felt bad for me legitimately because he could see that it was just,
see.
he could
Right.
see.
You know, choking. You choked. You literally
Choked. Yep. I
Wow.
literally choked.
Oh.
And it took me probably, I think I disclosed that to my mom like 5 years ago.
Oh.
I never told anybody about that, because if I told them that I got a first prize and I didn't earn it,
Right.
So that started this whole trajectory of not being enough to get what I earn, right? Like, I'm just given these things because people feel bad for me, you know? Even so, then like trying out for school plays, I would get the singing parts, I'd get all these things, and I'd be like, I don't deserve this. You know, like, I didn't earn this. It started this whole thing, even to getting my PhD, right? Like, oh, they just magically gave me this, right? I didn't do work, you know, I didn't work for this. I didn't do real research. I didn't, you know, all these things. And I'm like, God damn it. I did all those things. Stop it. You're killing me, you know? So I actually had to do trauma work around that. And it's funny because we're in a society that kind of gauges trauma now. Like, oh, your trauma is worse than my trauma, you know? But that for me,
competitive trauma.
I don't
Leave it to Americans to come up with something like
Competitive
that,
trauma.
right?
Oh my heaven.
And so it's interesting to me because when I work with women or even men, like, often I look for that kind of trauma too, especially in a high performer who maybe like didn't look like they had a life that had big traumas, but there were probably things like that occurred in their life with a teacher or something like that made them try to be more even when they were young. Like, look at those little children now that are trying to be so perfect, right? There's a reason why they're trying to be so perfect. And it may not be a sexual trauma. It may not be something happening at home. It could just be something that occurred that we're not really aware of that started this whole trajectory of bull, right? In their life, that they just, then you compound more evidence of the same, like me. Like, I would try out for something, I would get it. Well, that would go in this stupid backpack that I wore that was like, you didn't deserve that. You're not enough. Keep trying again, kid. Even though I'm getting things, right? I'm getting awards and I didn't earn this. I didn't earn this. I'm like, well, when the heck am I ever going to realize that I actually did earn something? You know, when the heck am I actually going to do that? So that was the work that I had to do around that enough. And that's when I finally stopped earning more certificates and licensures. You know, now I just podcast to write books. You know?
Not achieving so much anymore.
Thank you. I'll take
I mean, right? Like, there's something there. I think it's so relatable. And you know, and I think about, I mean, we always talk about like the women's magazines and how we might compare ourselves to women in magazines that are, these photos are so airbrushed, you know? Oh, yeah. Now it's Instagram. I think about what young kids are exposed to, you know, these Instagram photos, kind of the same thing.
You can airbrush yourself. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
or people just, you know, posting so much of this fabulous lifestyle that they live, and, you know, not
social media.
Not saying that they don't, you know, but there becomes this competitive thing that my life isn't perfect. I'm not like your life. what am I doing wrong? Why am I not enough to stand in front of a Lamborghini and take a photo, or whatever it is,
Right.
So, but for me, it was always like this internal competition. And I think a lot of type A women are like that. Like it's like this internal, I'm competitive with myself. I'm not competitive with you or her, him. It's just, I'm competitive with me. And that causes a lot of hardship for myself,
Yeah, sure.
Self-induced,
definitely so. And adrenal fatigue and thyroid crap and, all of that. Anxiety. I struggled with that for a while in my adult life. And I've had depression too. But, those were at times where I wasn't willing to look at what I was doing to myself. So that's really when your body is knocking at your door going, come on, are you going to listen to me? Are you going to listen now? How about now? I'm going to make you listen. Boom. Drop the mic, right?
And you're in that phase of, are you going to listen? Are you going to listen? And you're like, it's like you almost can't, because you haven't set yourself up for success. You can't hear it. I mean, you really can't hear. You need to slow down, right? So ahead of time, we need to try to prepare people and whatever for looking for moments of setting themselves up for success, because I did the same thing. I didn't hear it. So I just kept going.
Well, yeah. And, juggling 3 kids and all this stuff, like, again, fear and slowing down. I can't slow down. If I slow down, this house of cards that I've made will all fall apart. And then what? And I can't let myself fall apart either, because then what? It's all of this, because then what? If I give something up, everything will fall. Then what? If I allow myself to freak out, then what? So then it's like this internalization of everything, right? And then you go back to this thyroid thing. It's just all held right here. And now I don't even have a voice and I'm not going to say anything. It's just internalized. So there's a lot of psychology around this stuff. There's a lot of psychology around this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have some things on the site, about like the throat chakra, that energetic center of the body, and the links between being blocked in that area and not speaking your truth.
Think a little Teralyn playing the flute, or should I say not playing the flute?
Yeah. Okay. So what, someone comes to your office and you see this playing out and they say, I this is the kind of person that I am. And it's just like, I'm never enough. And, or I feel really restrained and like, I'm not speaking my truth, whatever it is. When you see somebody on this path, what do you tell them?
Well, first of all, I look a lot into their brain health. Like, what are the symptoms that because usually they come to me with a symptom first. It's not like the symptom could be overwhelm or whatever. Usually people don't come in and say, I'm type A and I juggle too many things, Sure. I wish, but usually it's like, I can't get out of bed, or I have severe anxiety after I get home from work. Cause most of us, I'll say, can keep our together while we're doing our job. It's after that things get out of control. So I do look a lot towards brain health, and I use a lot of nutrients, nutrition, and amino acid therapy in my office, which is tremendously helpful to do that. So you can raise energy levels pretty quick with certain amino acids, and you can dial down the nervous system with others, I'm not going to say them here because I don't want to give that kind of advice. But anyway, so they're very powerful and super important, because if the nervous system is going crazy, like, I can't really help you think through things very well if you're in this heightened state of anxiety a lot. So I like to look at holistic ways to bring that down. And that could be, incorporating a yoga practice into their life, or doing, quick little 5-minute tips or tricks or life hacks that you can incorporate as you go out through your day. Okay. Because I think we look at exercise and even yoga or meditation as now I have to find 45 minutes to an hour of my life to set aside to do this. And I don't even have 5 minutes. I'm like, well, do you have 3? Do you have 3 minutes? Can you breathe in the car on the way home? Can you do certain things right before you go to bed, taking care of yourself first. So I kind of look for opportunity of time first with these people. So number one would be like helping them dial down their nervous system or improve their energy level so they can actually do something about it. Right. So that's number one for me. And then number two is finding those opportunistic moments, right. To capture, because like I said, I was juggling all these things. If you told me to find, 45 more minutes of my life to do a yoga practice, I would tell you to screw off probably. Like there's no way I could have done it. I was going to say a different word, but I'll save that. But definitely 5 minutes here and there add up. And then if you want to expand that, you can definitely do that. So I do a lot of breath work, breathing, telling people and showing them exactly how to breathe and what to do, because the breath is tied to the nervous system so beautifully. And I don't think people use breathing the way we can to help ourselves. We just use it to stay alive, which is great. Got to be alive.
Got to have that. Yeah.
But we don't necessarily use it to help ourselves fall asleep. We don't use it to help ourselves rejuvenate. And those are quick and easy things you can do in a meeting.
Or calm down.
Right. Calm down, whatever. Like you could sit in a big meeting and breathe and nobody would know what you're doing. Versus, being in a meeting and doing jumping jacks, everybody would know what you're doing. Right. So so
it's just talking about it. I found myself taking a deep breath.
Right.
Exactly. It's so easy to do. And when you think about it, it's like, yes, just that one breath can
something about like a full lung, worth of air, that we don't, when we're stressed out, it's very shallow breathing typically, or even breath holding, like
that's me.
Yeah. Right.
I'm a breath holder.
You're a breath holder. So
I am a lot. It's kind of scary. Yeah.
Well, that's because you're aware of it. It wasn't scary before you knew it,
no,
right?
It wasn't, no.
Okay. Now you just know what you're doing or not doing. But, the biggest thing with the breath work is our nervous system takes about 5 to 7 minutes to catch on that it can actually calm down. So doing a 1 or 2 breath thing is good, like refreshingly good. But if you're anxious, it's probably not going to do the trick. So you really need to work on those slow exhales for about 5 to 7 minutes. So I like to do like micro goals with people, because if you come in and they think that I'm going to have to change everything about my whole world, they're going to walk out the door, so micro goals are very important, and it helps with buy-in. So, and also time, when you are a super high performing person, you don't have much time,
Right.
The time I had was between, driving home from work and hitting the driveway. I was work person, and then I was mom, and I had to get into that gear.
The gears pretty quick. Yes.
Mm-hmm, really quick. So sometimes I would take a longer route home just to have an extra moment or two to myself,
Sure. Yeah. Well, we talk about like habit stacking, when you're in the car driving home, you can do some breath work exercises. In the morning when you're brushing your teeth, you could do some positive affirmations. I am worthwhile. I am enough.
Right. Write it right on your mirror if you need to, so you can remind yourself to do it. I like habit stacking. That's a good term.
And the micro adjustments to your life. I love that too. I mean, these are great actionable steps for our listeners. We're, at our recording time, we're in a session of Thyroid 30 right now. And that's like our mantra is we are about taking small, sustainable steps towards positive life change. That's how you can lock them in, and we've learned that from our Thyroid Refresh team psychotherapists about, the parasympathetic nervous system.
Right.
And you can't just overwhelm yourself
You're already doing that. You're already doing that. You can't just add more things in and expect a different result. The last thing I wanted to just throw in here real quick is eating protein. And I know there's a lot of different things out there right now about what to eat. Don't eat this, don't eat that, whatever. Eating protein to help with anxiety is huge, and depression as well, because, low blood sugar, reactive hypoglycemia is huge with anxiety and with depression. And if you've ever struggled with this, you might either be a non-eater when times of stress happen, like you don't eat, you don't have an appetite, or an overeater of crap. Right? So you're still not getting any proteins. Proteins are the building blocks to neurotransmitters, to good brain health. So without having some protein every couple of hours when you feel like that, you're going to feel worse. So that's another micro adjustment. Just if the only thing you can look at is protein, then look at protein, if that's the only thing, that you can do. And I tell people, like, a lot of anxious people have no, appetite. So I'm like, just sip on a protein shake then. Can you sip on something? Because, they'll be drinking coffee or something. There's a lot more that I could say, but protein is huge.
Yeah.
So you think protein with every meal and snack?
Especially when you're not feeling well. Okay. I mean, when you're feeling better, you don't have to pay as close attention to it. But usually I say protein about every 3 hours, especially when you're highly anxious or super depressed or just fatigued. You'd be surprised how many things are cleaned up with when you're not in a hypoglycemic state. So the stress on your brain, the stress on your body, because what happens is adrenaline becomes produced when you're in hypoglycemia. So then adrenaline will happen. What's adrenaline? Fight or flight, anxiety, right? Then when you crash, what's that? Feels like depression, So there's a lot of that. So the very front thing is eating more protein to try to stabilize your blood sugars so that your emotional state is better. And then your thinking brain is online and you can make these micro adjustments.
I like it.
Easy peasy.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Teralyn, for these helpful tips and this wonderful conversation about, brain health and fatigue and thyroid and how sometimes our personality types can play into our diagnoses and different things we can do. It's been a pleasure having you here, and we wish you a very, very happy birthday.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. I love being on the show. It was super fun. And I love thyroid stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. See you guys next time.